Okay, let's talk about the hidden forces that are constantly guiding our decisions. We're going to dive into the incredible work of Dr. Robert Cialdini, who figured out the core psychological principles that get us to say yes. You can think of them as these invisible strings that, well, direct a lot of human behavior.
So, it all kicks off with a kind of strange but totally true story about mother turkeys. Now, they are fantastic mothers, loving, watchful, super protective. They're always warming and cleaning their little chicks. But researchers found something really odd about the whole process. So get this, the entire mothering instinct, all of it, is triggered by one little sound, the cheep cheep of her chicks. In one wild experiment, scientists took a stuffed polecat, which is a turkey's natural enemy, and stuck a little tape recorder inside that played that cheep cheep sound. Not only did the mother turkey accept this fake predator, she actually gathered it underneath her to keep it warm. But the second they turned the sound off, she attacked it like crazy.
Now you might be thinking, okay, that's a weird animal thing, but it brings up a really fascinating question about us. Are we really all that different? Do we have these little triggers that set off pre-recorded tapes of behavior without us even realizing it? Well, Cialdini's whole point is, absolutely, yes, we do.
The science behind this is called a fixed action pattern, and the way Cialdini describes it is just perfect. He calls it the click-whir response. Something in the environment, the click, triggers this tape in our brain, and whir, out comes the behavior, completely on autopilot. It's a mental shortcut, right? It saves us a ton of energy, but it also leaves us vulnerable.
And that's the whole idea right there. Our automatic tapes aren't hardwired instincts like the turkeys. Nope. They come from these powerful psychological principles we learn over our lifetime. And in the right hands, these principles can become incredibly powerful tools, or as Cialdini calls them, weapons of influence.
All right, so let's jump into the first weapon of influence. This one is built on a rule it's baked into every single human culture. And the rule is simple. We feel this deep obligation to give back to others the form of behavior that they have first given to us. Cialdini tells this great story about himself. He's walking down the street, and a Boy Scout comes up and asks him to buy a ticket to their annual circus. It's $5. Cialdini says, "No thanks." Then the Scout says, "Oh, okay. Well, if you don't want a ticket, how about buying one of our big chocolate bars? They're only $1. And Cialdini bought 2 of them, even though he doesn't really like chocolate. So what on earth just happened there? This is a super refined version of that reciprocity rule. See, the Boy Scout made a concession, right? He went from a big $5 request down to a small $1 request. In that moment, Cialdini felt this automatic pull to make a concession of his own, which was to go from saying no to saying yes. He reciprocated the Scout's retreat. It's brilliant. And the power of this rule is just immense, even if the gift is tiny and you didn't even ask for it. There was this classic study where a researcher, let's call him Joe, would bring a Coke for the person in the experiment. He'd just say, "Hey, I got one for myself, so I grabbed one for you." For other people, he didn't bring anything. Then later on, he asked everyone if they'd do him a favor and buy some raffle tickets.
The results were just staggering. The people who got the free 10-cent Coke bought way more raffle tickets. On average, they spent 50 cents. That is a 500% return on investment. The sheer psychological weight of getting an unexpected gift creates this powerful social obligation that we just feel like we have to resolve, even if it ends up costing us way more.
All right, weapon number 2. This one taps into our almost obsessive desire to be and to look consistent with the things we've already done. I mean, once we've made a decision or taken a stand, we face all this internal and external pressure to stick with it.
An unbelievable experiment shows this perfectly. Researchers went door to door in a neighborhood and asked people to put this huge, kind of ugly "Drive Carefully" sign on their front lawn. Predictably, only about 17% of people said yes. But for another group, they started with a much smaller request. They asked them to just put a tiny 3-inch sticker in their window that said, "Be a safe driver." Almost everybody said yes to that.
But here's the kicker. 2 weeks later, the researchers went back to that group, the ones with the little sticker, and asked them to put up the huge, ugly sign. This time, compliance shot up to an incredible 76%. That tiny little yes at the beginning made people over 4 times more likely to agree to the massive request later. That's a classic foot-in-the-door technique.
So why does this work? I mean, what's going on in our heads? Well, that small initial commitment actually starts to change how we see ourselves. Those homeowners started to think of themselves as, "Hey, I'm a good, civic-minded citizen. I care about safety." So when the bigger request came along, they almost had to say yes, just to stay consistent with that new identity they'd built for themselves.
Okay, our third weapon of influence. This one explains why we spend so much of our time looking to other people to figure out what we should be doing. It's the principle of social proof. Basically, we figure out what's correct by finding out what other people think is correct. You ever wonder about this? I mean, come on, canned laughter, it feels so fake, it's totally obvious, and pretty much everyone you ask says they can't stand it. And yet, TV executives swear by it. They keep using it because they know something really important about how our brains work.
And the answer is social proof. It's kind of crazy, but experiments have shown that when a laugh track is used, we actually laugh longer and more often. We even rate the jokes as being funnier. We're using the sound of other people laughing as a shortcut to decide that, hey, this must be funny. We see others doing it, so it feels like the correct thing to do.
And once you know about this mental shortcut, you start seeing it used everywhere. Bartenders will salt their tip jars with a few dollar bills at the beginning of the night. Why? To make it look like other people are tipping with cash, not just change. Churches sometimes do the same thing with collection plates. It's all designed to give you the impression that this behavior, tipping, donating, is what everyone else is doing.
Okay, so we've seen how these psychological forces can be pretty powerful and how they can be used to get us to comply. So the big question is, what can we do about it? Well, the key is learning to recognize when our automatic tapes are being triggered for the wrong reasons.
When we're talking about consistency, it helps to remember the full quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. See, consistency on its own isn't bad. In fact, it's usually a good thing. But a foolish consistency, that automatic, unthinking kind, that's the trap we have to watch out for.
Cialdini gives us a couple of great signals to help us snap out of that click-whir response. First, he says to listen to your stomach. You know that tight feeling you get in your gut when you realize you're being pushed into something you don't want to do? That's a huge red flag. Second, for the more subtle traps, you can ask yourself a heart of hearts question. Just step back and think, knowing what I know right now, would I go back and make that same choice? It's a great way to check in with what you really feel, away from all the pressure.
But really, at the end of the day, the absolute best defense is just being aware. Now that you know about reciprocation, commitment, and consistency and social proof, you're going to start seeing them everywhere. In ads, in sales pitches, in daily life. And once you can spot them, you give yourself the power to hit pause, to actually think, and to choose how you want to respond, instead of just letting an automatic tape make the choice for you.